Well, first of all, thank you, Nancy, for such a warm welcome. And always, it's so nice when we get to spend time with Nancy and the wonderful work she does for ECIS. It really is a privilege to be here. And I want to just welcome each one of you. So, really, the goal is here to kind of think about in a context of a middle level leader in a school, how are you juggling the different digital tools and platforms that we have to engage with? I just want, Nancy, I'm going to let you admit people now, if that's okay. So I am the digital learning facilitator at the International School of Geneva. I've been a deputy principal, IT director, and director of eLearning, and various other leadership positions. What you need to know, apart from this picture and the last picture, all the pictures have been generated by Gemini for Google Workspace for Education. So just so you know, and the spelling and the grammar was reviewed by this large language model that's integrated in the Google Workspace for Education, just for transparency. So as a middle level leader, you're always juggling quite a few things. You're juggling teaching. You very likely have a teaching component. You are very likely doing some curriculum coordination, meetings. And then amongst this, you have a lot of unpredictability and accelerated change. Maybe a new curriculum. Maybe it's a new platform. Maybe an update. While a lot of these digital tools and these AI tools can really help you and support you, adapting to them requires time and effort. And I think the misunderstanding is that when things don't work, people blame the tool. A lot of it has to do is what kind of shared agreements do you have? What kind of trust and transparency? How are you leveraging and encouraging and being humble in the way you have collaboration? And how are you keeping committed to those agreements and the workflows and aligning your expectations with your team members' expectations? And I think this is really important to understand that it doesn't matter what tool you have. If these things aren't engaged with, and that's something that many of you have taken middle level certificate courses or been involved with ECIS's rich professional development, this is really so important. So I just want to make a real emphasis on that because I think so often we forget. So the fact is, you have a lot of different systems. You're using many different tools. One thing to consider is when you are deciding as a team what tools to use, think first of all, before going out, what are the tools that you have in your school? How well do you know the capacity of your Google Workspace, your Office 365, whatever it might be? Think about the team and really get this idea of meeting everybody's needs. You might have to let go of something so everybody can engage because maybe they're not as comfortable. I think it's really important to align with the school platforms and then also create a set of rules that you're willing to live with and that are realistic. Also, choose tools that can really help you reduce certain workflows. And then also spend a lot of time as what does accountability look like? What is a shared practice going to be like? And how, as a team, are we going to ensure we align ourselves to this? And never underestimate your team members. Leverage the different digital skills to maybe support the shared learning. So I think these are some things to consider. I think in any situation, get to know the tool yourself as a middle school leader, middle level leader, before you ask somebody to use it. How comfortable, mentor it, pilot it. Think about the digital learning coaches you have, your IT department. Think of your professional learning network. These are all people and resources that you can tap into. Think about doing team walkthroughs. So if you've decided now to use the Office calendar or the Google Calendar and all its power. Let's walk through it too as a team. What could we use? What can't we use? Avoid assumptions. Don't just assume everybody knows how to use the tool, or don't just assume they don't know how to use the tool. What are kind of the essentials? What is the minimum we can get away with? Spend a lot of time ahead of time. So before the school year starts, during orientation week, even dedicate some regular check-ins on your progress. And then remember, you want to comply with your school's policies on data protection and security. This is really important. As a leader, you need to mentor this and model this. This is a really nice way to highlight and amplify the importance of privacy and ethics. You're going to go into a breakout room and think about how you use digital tools currently in your team and identify one practice that you feel is working really well and explain how it supports your workflows and collaboration. And then think one area where your team struggles, maybe something that doesn't work. Maybe some people use email, some people use chat, some people do comments in a document, and sometimes it feels like they're over notifications, over information. So you're going to spend 6 minutes in the chat room. It's a quick round robin. Make sure, as we know, we want to ensure all voices are heard, be short and succinct, and if you have a question, please paraphrase before. So 6 minutes, Nancy, please.
Will do. And everyone, someone's just coming in. The PDF, as I mentioned, is in the chat, and it also includes the prompt that John just shared. So if you need a reference, please go back to that PDF. So I am now going to open the rooms, and there is 4 in a room. So enjoy, and I hope you make some connections as well. I'll be opening up the rooms right now. There we go.
So one of the things that we all know, and our generation is still kind of very much email centric, is there's a lot of research about email, how actually it's super unproductive. And you can just read here from a variety of studies show you that it really is not the most efficient way to work within an environment. And as a middle level school leader, chances are not only do you have your colleagues emailing you, but you have parents, and depending where you are in the pedagogic age group, you're going to be having students. That can be a lot to manage. So what we're going to do is just explore some things to consider. Of course, you all have your own, I am sure, ways of doing things. One thing that a lot of people, and I find works really well for me, is the batch processing. I have 2 to 3 times daily that I focus on email. I don't have any notifications on my phone or on my computer. I do use a lot of filters, and I have an AI tool. I have Gemini in my Google Workspace for Education, so it helps me do a lot of summaries. I basically break it up into 3 categories. Also, I have a tool 2-minute rule. I read the email for 2 minutes. If there's something that I need to do, I move that into a task. And then the longer emails, I break them up into things that I could delegate, things that I need to discuss. If I need to discuss, I don't do it in email. One of my rules is if an email is longer than 3 sentences, then I get up and answer the person in person. And I'm sure many of you are doing that. Also, making sure you use scheduling tools for non-urgent emails, being very transparent to your team members and your community when you answer emails. I think often writing brief action-oriented replies is much better. If you can create a bunch of templates. Many of you might be using Copilot or Gemini. So there again, you can leverage these AI tools. Just be mindful that there is now more and more real evidence in a lot of our communication is AI driven, and there's kind of a vanilla flavor to everything. And I think somebody was actually talking about what happens when we lose our voice. And so that might be something to really think of. One thing that some teams do is they move to a chat tool. So during the week in between meetings, they have an agreement, they have a chat tool. The only problem is that people then expect you to chat back. And if you're teaching at the same time, that doesn't really make sense. Anything that requires a deeper discussion, put it offline or go into a different venue. I think that is really important as we explore uh, email efficiencies. So I have put some resources here. So if you're interested, there are all kinds of email assistants and there are various strategies that you can use. Be mindful in the context of your school. You might not be allowed just to adopt any email assistant. So make sure you check with your school IT department and your data protection officer just to make sure. But a lot of the systems that you very likely work with, if you're in Toddle, if you're in ManageBack, if you're in Veracross or PowerSchool or Schoology or even Google Workspace or Microsoft, all these platforms have tools, and we're going to talk about those in a few seconds. I think one of the things that a lot of us are excited about is this idea of leveraging AI tools. I think one thing to double check before you run out and go and look at the tools outside of your school, look what you already have inside. You might have capacity with some of your systems, but it's a requirement to turn it on, or maybe you need to buy a license. Maybe your IT department is going to want you to pay out of your budget. Those are things to really think about. Also, be strategic. Having 10 different AI tools is not really going to help you much. Think about what is a good tool that covers your needs and how it fits your current needs. Also, prioritize ethics. Think about tools that are transparent and inclusive. Also, be very mindful when you're using these tools. How are you sharing information? Is this information appropriate to be sharing? And think also of value. Is this actually helping you be more efficient? Is it much better using this now that you have it, or do you feel the learning curve is such and that your team members aren't using it, that it's a kind of an isolated added benefit? So, what AI tools will tend to do is they can automate tasks like sorting emails, drafting, they can summarize, they can sometimes enhance clarity. If you have a more complex situation, you can organize your inbox. Remember, it's important to use the human touch. Don't just live on robotic replies. Also, think about boundaries and your own well-being, and also be very clear and transparent when you work with people that you're using these AI tools. Think if you're going to do a presentation and you used AI, tell people it's fine. It's not perceived as worse or negative. It's about us being transparent and building the sense of trust when we're doing connections and our leadership is intentional.
John, I have a question that someone just sent to me.
Yeah,
Is it now expected that when you do a report or even when you do presentations, that there is now a format to, you know how there's MLA? Do you
yeah.
now have an MLA format for ChatGPT, for example, to state where you were able to access certain content?
That's a really good question. So there are some people that are promoting and sharing formats on professional learning networks. That's something that I would talk to your librarian about and also your school, because different people use different formats. Some people use Chicago, some people use MLA. So it just depends, right? So I think the one thing that I think is important, if I'm in front of a group of professionals that I respect, I want them to know when I'm using AI and not. It's not about fooling them or trying to make them think I'm better than they are. So I always say at the beginning, I've used these pictures, are AI generated, the grammar in the sentences have been checked by AI. Some of the research that I do, sometimes I now use ChatGPT paid version for research because it will go out to the internet and search. I find the returns are quite good, but I often always, anything that ChatGPT brings back to me, I usually cross-examine with another large language model like Gemini or Claude, or I even go out on the internet and just check if the response resonates. So I think that's a great question, but in these cases, it's always good to really think about your context and what is appropriate and not appropriate.
Thank you,
So,
John.
you know, often people can feel that meetings can be tough. Without a clear agenda, they feel unproductive. And with so much teaching and administration that you have to do, you often don't have time to prepare. It's really hard to lead discussions, resolve conflict, and really keep everybody engaged. So one thing, there are a few little things that you might consider as a middle level leader. One of them is meeting timing. You can now in Google Calendar and Outlook, there are some very powerful tools that if everybody shares their calendar, it will go and find the times that are appropriate for you to meet. So you don't have to do that legwork. Another thing is to really think about meetings being not longer than 20, 30 minutes. And if they're 45, 60 minutes, those are meetings that are really about deep, meaningful conversations. I think you can also use a variety of apps to help you with agenda planning. And really using your agenda is also minutes and it's also a working document. Not having a document of minutes, a document of agendas, and then responses on another document. Leveraging those tools where you can use multiple different things in a Google Doc or in an Office 365 doc where you can put comments, you can put links, you can embed calendars, you can embed sheets, those kind of things. Really, a nice thing to do is always rotate your roles and making sure that when you say you're going to do something, there is a cookie biscuit trail of what are you doing, when are you doing it, who's responsible, and letting some digital technology help you manage that. That can be really helpful. I think it's always good to use inbuilt timers, using a transcription tool so you can actually use Otter AI. If you're in an online meeting, there's Google Meet, there's Zoom. There are many different tools that allow you so you're focused on the discussion and not writing the minutes. What's really nice is then to get AI generated summaries of the minutes. You can also see what are the patterns. Are some people talking more? You can do a longitudinal over the last 5 meetings on this topic about, let's say, for example, allocating new standards and benchmarks into this unit. You could look at the patterns and what were some of the learnings and some of the pinch points that maybe people are challenged by. So this is one thing to consider. The
John,
other one,
sorry, John, there's
yes,
another question I got DM'd.
yeah,
You're inspiring a lot of questions right now. So
good.
I'm
I'm
getting the
happy.
DMs.
Please, I'm happy to be interrupted.
Number one was you mentioned that for Google, you can have those shared calendars and then actually AI can then find the times where there is a common planning. What is the equivalent for that in Microsoft?
So Microsoft and Outlook, as I understand, there is that capacity, but I'm not familiar on what you do to generate that. Like in Google Calendar, there's some very clear ways you prompt your calendar,
Right.
and always you're referring to people, etc. So you can do @ John Mikton and my email comes in.
Right.
So in Office 365, I know it works too. I am unfortunately not that familiar, but I think it's something you can definitely find a YouTube video or
Right.
talk to somebody at your school. But definitely both of those things. Now, the problem is some schools turn on the feature for administrators, but not teachers because these
Ooh,
costs. So, for example, in the situation I'm at, my license that I use in my Google Workspace is costing the school $350 a year, 350 francs. Now we have 1,200 faculty. Do the maths. That becomes
yeah.
very
Okay.
expensive.
Okay.
So the one thing that we've decided is that teachers can use their budget. They have an assigned budget as a classroom resource or departments. And in my department, which is the teaching and learning department, we have a budget and we agreed that some people would be using it and then we don't get other things. So that's just something to be mindful of. Yeah.
I wonder how many people in this session, we have 20 right now, are using AI for their meetings.
Put your thumbs up. Use the thumbs up icon if you are.
And
The
anyone.
thumbs up. Okay. So you are. Okay.
Okay, we got
So
it.
there are a few
Okay, thank
people.
you, John.
So the flipped meeting is a great way where all that kind of busyness, videos and we need to do this, the directive teaching and learning needs this, the business manager needs this, the reception needs that. Get all that done outside of the meeting. And during the meeting, you're really focusing on brainstorming, planning, and using tools like Mentimeter to get opinions and see what are the patterns in breakout rooms. This really can save time. If you get bogged down with what I call business admin in your meeting, you're never going to find time to have those deep discussions. So think about what could you do to offset. So when you meet 30 minutes a week or 40 minutes a week, it's really meaningful student-centric conversations and all the other stuff you handle through a flip meeting. You might even, as a leader, do a quick video and say, these are 4 things you need to do. I've just put them in a document I've shared with you. Here's the timeline. Here's a link with the information. So people can kind of self-advocate and work with that themselves. Yeah. Another thing that can be really powerful that helps you is looking at patterns. So if you're a team and you have had many meetings together and you feel you're not always productive, or maybe things that have been assigned as a task, or maybe a project, things kind of disappear, they don't fall through. This is where you can really look at some analytics. So if you use an AI tool to analyze maybe your project timelines, or maybe the minutes that you have, or look at all the agendas and look who's at the meeting and not at the meeting. Those can be really helpful pieces of information for you to recalibrate and think, okay, there's definitely an issue on this topic and we're not aligned, even though I thought we're aligned. You can also monitor engagement, analyze behavior, trends. You can use feedback. Feedback is super important, and that's a nice way to quickly aggregate that feedback and see progress. You can also identify areas that people are struggling or students. So tools can quickly analyze. These AI tools can really analyze large pieces of information very quickly. And they can create good summaries, and that then allows you having data. Data is one of the important points to make good decisions. There's your gut feeling, there's what you hear and say, and then there's the data. And so these are things to really consider as you start looking at leveraging these tools to help you out. So what you're going to do is you're going to explain, or you're going to spend time in the second breakout room where we're going to explore how data and AI tools can help your team make better decisions. Think about one way that you're collecting data. Of course, you very likely have an attendance in your student information system. You have a grading book. But now with many of these AI tools, you have much greater capacity to look at patterns, to look at tension points, look at predictions, look at what you might not be doing that you need to do, and then think, how might you think some of these AI tools could improve how you analyze this data? So think about maybe all the minutes that you have in a Google Doc, or all the minutes you have in a Microsoft Word, or you might be working in an Atlas curriculum ecosystem and you have your minutes in there, or even your your learning management system, whatever it is. What would happen if you used an AI tool to summarize and look at patterns and what works and doesn't work? So think about that context. What are you doing? How might you use it? Or if you're using it, tell us how you're using it and why it works. 6 minutes, and then we'll come back for a little wrap up. What I've done in the PDF, there are a lot of great admin tools, and those are things that you might consider. Now, remember too that in your workspace, if you're working in the Google workspace or Microsoft 365, there are a lot of fantastic tools that have come online. It's a paid add-on, Gemini, that requires school to purchase licenses, and the features depend on the region and the different types of education package your school has bought. But this is just to give you an example. You can quickly scour this document. It gives you what it can do. It can really help to do a lot of things. Yeah? And then if we think of Microsoft Office 365 Education, there is a thing called Copilot that feeds off ChatGPT. And again, these are different things that it can do. So these are things that maybe if you are in a school setting, you might want to explore and see what the thing are that you can leverage. For me, the secret tool as a leader is the calendar. If you think of the calendar and if you can convince everybody to work and communicate only within a calendar, you will really cut down your emails. So what you can do is centralize. What's nice about calendars, you can schedule meetings. People can respond to the meeting. If they have a proposed other time, they can do it without having an email. You can attach documents. You can write notes. You can actually put a link. You can put a video feed in. So these are all really important features that I think sometimes are underutilized in the calendar, be it Outlook or Google Calendar. So I really think that if teams would be willing to find the time, I think you're going to find that calendar could cut out a lot of that communication and centralize things. In our school, our leadership team only communicates through the calendar, all our important documents. So we just had a faculty meeting and there were all kinds of presentations given and important tasks to do. Everything was in the calendar because we were all invited to attend the meeting. They're all scheduled during the year. They're in our Google Calendar, and with them are all the important documents and timelines and actions. And the principal doesn't have to send emails because we know if we want to find that information, we go into the staff meeting calendar invitation on our calendars and we can find those documents. So that's just an example maybe to consider. So as I said, there are hundreds of tools out there. Again, double check with your school what is allowed and not allowed. Different schools have different philosophies and different capacities to let people do whatever they want. But definitely there are a lot of things out there. Then also think about your learning management system. Think about also your student information system. A lot of those now have AI tools. But really, the four most powerful tools, and if you think of something like Copilot, or if you think of Magic School, all these other AI tools are dependent on these four large language models. So it depends what kind of relationship these companies have. Many will pay a subscription fee to ChatGPT, and that allows them to then use it in their own AI. So Copilot is fueled by ChatGPT. Gemini, of course, by Google. Claude Sonnet is the latest large language model from Anthropic, and Mistral is another one that was started by two French engineers and now has been funded by Google and Microsoft and Amazon. So you can see that we have these four big powerful language models. There are ones in other parts of the world, like in China and India, and you're starting to see more coming in. What's really important as we wrap up is that think about how you can make the most of the digital tools you already have. It's really quick to say this doesn't work, but there are so many videos. Talk to people in your professional learning network. Get a group of teachers together and have some nice cheese and bread or whatever people like and sit around and just play around and say, oh, if we did this, we could do that. Kind of exploring, I think sometimes builds the confidence of people in the teams. Think about ways to gather data. Also, start small. If you want to improve your communication or planning, think about what is the one thing, do an analysis. What is the one thing everybody complains about when you have meetings? What could we do to improve that? Encourage the collaboration, the continuous learning, and the shared goals. really, as we started, remember, reflect on how trust and support can really create those lasting improvements. Everybody has a different entry point and capacity to learn new tools. Everybody comes to any situation with different emotional capacities. So when you're coming in a meeting, don't and somebody looks grumpy, it might not be because of you, it might be whatever happened during the day. So just be mindful as a middle level leader, what are some things that you can do to leverage and mitigate that sense of overwhelmness or that sense that these meetings are pointless? And hopefully some of the approaches, dispositions, and tools I've shared are an opportunity for you to do. We're going to do one last activity. We have 3 minutes. You're going to write, I used to think, and then write something about leveraging digital tools as a middle level leader. And now I think you're not going to hit return. You just type and wait. And Nancy's going to tell us when to hit return. So in the chat, you said, I used to think when I was working with digital tools, I had to learn everything, or I had to always go and buy new ones. But now I know I can use the things in our school, etc. I'm just giving you examples. Yeah.
Thank you.
So if you can take the time to do that, that would be most appreciated. So I'm going to put the prompt there.
About 30 more seconds, everyone. John, you could do the counting off. 1, 2,
Okay,
3. Okay.
sounds good. Okay, we are in about 10 seconds. We want to make sure that everybody has had a chance, something brief, and then we'll stop sharing and we can look at the chat here. Okay, if you could be so kind to open your chat and hit return, and let's see what we have. Go for it.
Wow, these are amazing. Oh, you got some people changing about Google as well. Some great ideas here. Can you imagine doing this same activity with your staff? If you were to present
Yeah,
just one tool,
or your team.
your team, because I think right now people just get overwhelmed with the volume of resources that are available. I mean, and you just you don't know where to begin. And if you just start small and just seeing the possibilities with that one tool, I think it'd be endless.
I agree. I think really starting with one tool. I'm a big fan of calendars, and I've spent a lot of time with our leadership team, and they've really leveraged it in our office, and they never send emails out. They just say it's if somebody says, "Oh, I don't know where the bus duty roster is." It's in the all year round invitation called bus duty rosters. And there's
Wow.
the spreadsheet, you know? It just makes sense. Then again, I want to make sure I am not paid by Google or Microsoft. I am just in a Google school, so I leverage it. Previously, Nancy and I were together in a school that was Microsoft. They're
Exactly.
the same. It's like, do you like Pepsi or Coke? It depends. Some people like more of a sugary taste than whatever it might be. You need to know that these tools are designed for businesses where profit and time is really important. So they are designed to help make things efficient. But in the corporate world, if I think of my two children who are adults and work in companies, they don't get to decide if they get to use the calendar a lot or if they don't like it. It's a non-negotiable and they just use it and they come to terms with it and they leverage it. I think in schools we have far more democratic. We like to have our own ideas. We like our own flavors. Those are wonderful, but sometimes it can be at the detriment of having some efficiencies. So as we know, and I'm sure Nancy has told you many times, if you've done anything with her, leadership is not about being in charge. It's about taking care of those in your charge, and especially with digital tools. It's not about what tool you like, it's what tool makes sense for the differentiated audience that you have that is your team. That's the tool that's important. Go and do all your bells and whistle tools on your own, but what makes sense with the type of dispositions that you work with, what tool makes sense to use, and how do we start small? And I think that's just something that we can consider. And I want to thank you. Feel free to keep in touch. You can always reach me at the International School of Geneva. I have a blog called beyonddigital.org, and I have a podcast called International Schools Podcast. Nancy has been our guest, but just really don't hesitate to reach out. We're here to help you, and ECIS does some amazing work. And we have a course on AI digital tools. That might be something to explore. There are other courses on leadership capacity and team building. Definitely consider really digging into the menu of options that ECIS has for you. And on that note, if you have any further questions, I'm happy to stay on for about 5 minutes because I actually have something taking place here in about a half hour.
And
So
John, I just want to
anyway,
say thank you, thank you, thank you. You are fabulous.
thank
To
you,
share this time
everybody.
with, I'm just going to